So a lot of people right now are wondering, is right now a good time to buy a home? And while a lot of people look at market indicators, honestly, your own life plan is more important than the market itself.
Yeah, because there are a lot of other things tugging at you, right? Like, so we probably should address those.
Yeah, because, people always look at interest rates and then they look at their, how much they can afford monthly to make a decision on buying a home. And while that's really important, if it's an investment property, it's totally different. And you should just look at those numbers. It's all cash in versus cash out. When it's your own home, there's definitely other things you need to consider.
Yeah, obviously. So the first one is, am I going to live here for the next 5 or 10 years, right?
This is a huge one.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people have a long-term perspective on things these days.
But sometimes they have a short-term perspective. Like I was just talking to a buyer a couple of days ago, and he's like, yeah, I want to get a home now. And I kind of personally know him. So I said, well, how long do you plan on staying here? Because I feel like, your kids are moving, and what are you going to do? I don't know. Like I probably just a couple years, maybe in my mind, it's just not a good financial decision to buy a home and live in it for 2 years.
Yeah, and I'm, by the way, you guys know, I'm obviously, a real estate junkie pretty much, but the last home I was in 15 years, I still own it. I built it. And the home we just bought, what did I say to you? I said,
this is it.
I'm not moving again.
Yeah.
Like for real. Like guys, I had more than two, but let's call it 2 primary houses in Arizona. And I've had other houses in other markets and vacation homes and all that kind of stuff, and I still do. But the point is you have to have, in my opinion, you got to kind of have a long-term perspective. Unless you're somebody like my son, who's now in the market and he's looking to buy his first house. And so the question is, actually, I just had this conversation with him over the weekend. I said, as you buy your first house, you got to be thinking about a few other things. One is, do you want to sell it when you move out? How long do you want to be in it? And also, is it rentable, right? Mm-hmm. Now, because I don't care what you do, but you need to at least be thinking about those things. And so you might not want to rent it. You might not. You might want to sell it and use the cash and buy the next one. But Danielle didn't. She rented hers and then did a line of credit and bought the next one and started her path of real estate investing. So these are things that a lot of people don't think about,
Well, right, because you have to think, too, when you're buying that home. So that's a good point you bring up. If you're one of these people that are scrappier, is like, I'm going to live in it for a year or 2, 3, and then I'm going to save up for my next property, and I'm going to rent this one and move into my next one. That's much more different than this is my family house where, I'm moving my whole family in here, because what you're buying is different, too, right? Like, I deal with this with clients all the time where they want to buy this really nice rental property. And it's like, yeah, but there's a rental cap. So, you might buy, like in Arizona, a $450,000 house and a $600,000 house don't rent for that much different of a price because there's a cap on how much a tenant is going to spend to live in your house. Like a tenant can't pay $4,000 a month most of the time in most markets because they would just go buy something. So you have to understand that when you're buying. So that's a good point. Is this going to be a rental or am I going to stay here? But then secondly, unless you're going to move out and rent it, you're going to want a place you're going to be staying at for 5+ years because the market could go down. You have to pay a lot to obtain this mortgage. When you're making payments on your mortgage, it doesn't even start to chip into the balance for a few years, because you're really just paying all the interest. So you really have to think about all of these things. And if you're not planning on staying somewhere for 5 or 10 years, you probably shouldn't buy. It makes more financial sense to rent.
Well, I got to tell you, so the last house that I still own today that I built at the very best time, 2008.
Yep.
So I was under construction, right? And of course I finished it and I moved in. But now let's take a look at what my life was like in 2008. Gold is near all-time highs, but appreciation isn't the only way to benefit. Monetary metals, you could potentially earn a yield on your gold, paid in physical gold, without selling it. Here's how it works. When you lease your gold through their platform, pre-qualified companies pay to use it under strict guidelines. Like renting out real estate, but with gold. Instead of paying to store your metal, you may earn up to 4% annually in gold. You stay in control and you can choose which leases to participate in. Monetary Metals handles the due diligence, lease terms, and all the administration. Thousands of investors use this approach to grow their gold, not just sit on it. Visit monetary-metals.com/Ken to learn more. Leasing gold involves risk and returns are not guaranteed. This is not an offer to buy or sell securities. Please review all risk disclosures at monetary-metals.com. Visit monetary-metals.com/Ken to learn more. I had a family, raising kids, built for the kids, essentially. You guys know at this point, a lot of you, we do a lot of things for them, right? School districts, across some baseball fields, cul-de-sacs, backyards, all the, certain garage types, all that kind of stuff we do if we can, right? So very, very, very different scenario from when, maybe you're single, or maybe you're an empty nester, or maybe you're just relocating. Maybe you're going for somewhere because of a family, but all those things do have a huge perspective on, obviously what you're going to do in that particular home.
Yep.
Right. And so to your point, on the rental side of that, you are right. There's a cap, right? There's a certain person. You can certainly buy really nice rentals. But then you are actually, what you're competing is probably in that luxury market, and how many people are actually, and then they're going to look like Danielle's got a listing right now that's in an absolutely drop dead location in a beautiful condo project. And the HOA fees are so much. And did you see how that deal that I just sent?
Yeah, the HOA deal was like $2,500 a month.
24. Yeah, it was 24 and change a month. The HOA fees now the house was like $3.5 million, but you imagine that.
It's a lot of money.
The HOA fees were basically 40 grand a year, right? And I didn't dig into why, but you start to look at these other things, again, on whether you're living there or whether you're going to try to rent it later. That house is going to sit for a while. The one I sent you, because of that, just like your condo has, and the condo's not set up for kids.
No,
it's set up for a couple or one person.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very different.
Yep. And the second thing you want to look at is, do you have 20% to put down? Now, the reason I bring this up is home prices have gone up significantly. And I know you only need to have 5% down to really buy your first house. However, you have PMI, which is private mortgage insurance. And that's not insurance for you. That's insurance for the bank, stating that since you're putting so little down, we want you to pay this private mortgage insurance so that if you default, we're kind of covered here. And you don't have to put 20% down, but in order to get rid of the PMI, which can really add up when you're buying a $500,000 home, it's important to consider.
Yeah, you just want to look at the cost of that PMI. It does cover the lender, but they consider anything under 20% of risk. So that's why they're insuring you, essentially. So, but to Danielle's point, there's a cost to it, and you got to take a look at, you might be better off actually having that money work for you rather than for them, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, it's usually about $150 per every 100,000. So, if you're putting 5% down on a $500,000 house, that's a lot of extra money, so you really have to consider that. Like, do you buy a house now, or do you wait till you have 20% saved up to buy the house? I mean, we're not in a market now where, like we were in 2020, where things were going up like crazy. We're in a more stagnant market. So you do want to have that conversation with yourself is, do we buckle down and save to the 20%, or do we just, pay the PMI?
Oh, I have one other thing that you might want to be looking at. If you are in a PMI situation, a private mortgage insurance situation, and you had it on there for, let's say, 2, 3, 4 years, my guess is that you're now well outside of that 80% number. So let me give you an example. So let's say you bought a house for $500,000, and you put down $100 grand. let's say. So you're now in a PMI situation. You got a $400,000 mortgage. If that house went up in the last 4 years, you're now, from a loan to value, you're significantly below that 80% mark. So now I know that is technically a refinance, but I also know that you need to take a look at that PMI. So you might have your home equity might be high enough to where you can get away from that PMI at this point. So just an FYI.
Well, that or maybe even a home equity line of credit, depending if you can find a bank that'll do it. If you just need an extra $10,000 or $20,000, you might be able to get that.
It's possible, yeah.
So number 3 is, and first-time home owners really don't realize this, and I've chatted with them about it, is you need a savings account. Because
just a sec, who doesn't have a savings account?
So many home buyers, they use all of their savings to put the money down to buy the house.
Oh,
so they have a savings account, but they basically drain it all. They don't think about the savings account part.
Oh, okay. So like if you need $50,000 to buy something, they have $50,000.
Yeah, or $55,000, or you know what I mean. They don't really have a savings,
and they move it all in, and so they have zero.
Yes. Yeah. So you have to think of that.
That's the PMI thing.
Yeah. Yes, correct. Yeah, because your house is going to break no matter how many inspections you do, how great the inspector was. Your HVAC system might go out. I just got a call today. One of my tenants has roof rats. Like, you got to get an exterminator out there. Like, you have all these, things that come up when you're a homeowner. So you really should have money in the bank.
Yeah. I get it. Like, but I do understand, like, all right, I want to buy a house. I want to get into the game. I want to get into a hard asset. The thing is if you have any kind of income, you need to save like crazy that next year.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. It's okay, I think, to move it all over, and buy something, to be able to get in the game. But to Daniel's point, something can and will go wrong. Murphy's Law, for sure. Something will happen. You will need something. Or maybe it's just, something that, your refrigerator, it could be anything that you might need. And you don't want to get into the situation where you're financing all this stuff.
Well, and I think, as people come from being tenants, they sometimes don't realize everything that their landlord does or takes care of, and I think that's part of it too, is when you're a tenant, you're just used to things break. I call somebody, they fix it. You don't really think about how much it costs. You don't really think about, any of that. But when now all of a sudden you're a homeowner, you have to think about those things. So let's go to the next one, which is when you're going to buy a home, location is everything.
Yeah, I think a lot of people know this,
Do you?
Yeah, well, I hope so. Gosh, I guess maybe it's just beating me.
Yeah.
Location. Here's the thing. Like, think of this, guys. Any of you, like, when you go on vacation somewhere, it doesn't really matter. Like, let's say San Diego, right? Where are you going to go? You're going to go, if you have kids, near, let's say, the zoo or Legoland or the beach or whatever it is. Like, your proximity of where you're going to be is the most important thing for you, for mobility, all that kind of stuff. That's where your head needs to be. And then it's not going to be 10 miles away. Because things were more affordable there. It's going to be tougher to have an Airbnb 10 miles away or 5 miles away or even 3 miles away, because a lot of people don't want to have cars. This is such a big thing, right? Be where people are.
Well, just be where you want to be. If you're someone that wants to live in the middle of nowhere, that's fine too. But what you don't want is to buy something that is not really where you want to live, and you figure you'll just live there for a couple years and then you can move where you want to live. Because I know a girl that she was in Mesa. She bought in Arizona in Mesa, and she told me it was about a $70,000 difference between the house she wanted in Mesa and the house she wanted in Scottsdale. Now, this was in 2019. And they decided to go to Mesa because it was cheaper. Well, now she's upset because she actually wants to move to Scottsdale, but now there's a $150,000 difference between the house she wants in Mesa and the house she wants in Scottsdale. So, if it's a better area, it's going to appreciate faster. And also, if it's more expensive, even percentage wise, it's going to appreciate faster. So, your gap's going to get bigger, and you should never want to move somewhere for a while until you want to move where you want to move. You want to just wait and save and then move where you want to move.
Yeah, here's the thing. Most pricing is higher in what you would call core areas. So core areas would be where, just like I mentioned earlier, where people want to be, right? And there's typically not room for a lot of additional supply.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a real important point. So because there's not room for additional supply, let's say like an area that's built out, like Coronado Island, let's say San Diego, which I used to take the kids to when they were little. It's an island. Manhattan is an island, and that's why they're selling air rights, right? Because it grows to the edges and then it grows up. It goes and then it starts fighting against height, right? And so this is typical and normal. And so when you have a lot of people going to an area, it puts more demand on that core because you have a supply problem. And so more people, less supply, prices go up. And so that's actually what's happening here in Scottsdale with, it's not surprising. Mesa, by the way, is huge. Lots of areas to build. It's expanding. It's a growing area. Nothing wrong with that. But to your point, a lot of excess land and and a lot of new development. Scottsdale, on the other hand, is one of those markets where it's really, really, really hard to build. And it's pretty buttoned up. The city, and it's the zoning and the height restrictions and all the stuff. And Paradise Valley is the same way. So that actually preserves value. Mm-hmm. When you can't do urban sprawl or whatever you want to call it, it actually preserves value. And like it or not, you have to actually play that into your decision.
Yep. And I like that a lot of home buyers, especially first-time home buyers, are really concerned about appreciation. They're buying partially for appreciation more than anything. That's why they want to get out of their rentals, is they want that appreciation. So when you look at that, a lot of first-time home buyers make a mistake and they want to get a really nice house in an area that's not that desirable because that's where they can afford. But that is not going to appreciate like getting the worst house in the best area.
I would, yeah, for sure. I would rather have like Danielle, when I, twisted her arm, she bought a 2-bedroom home in Scottsdale. Now, most of you are like, why would she do that? Like, because there's a lot of people, that, by the way, they would say, I would never buy a 2-bedroom home. I would only buy a 3-bedroom or even a 4-bedroom or even a 5-bedroom home. Even if they don't have kids, mm-hmm. They're like, oh, yeah, we need those extra bedrooms. Don't ask me why, but they do. And I said to her, quite simply, this home is going to always be one of the more affordable homes in Scottsdale. Always, because it's 2 bedrooms. And obviously a 2-bedroom should be less than a 3-bedroom. And I said, therefore, it's always going to be an affordable play, a great rental for anybody who wants to be in that school district in the area. But there are people that say, and by the way, this was one of the worst homes in the area that you bought.
Yeah, but the home was $230,000 at the time, and the homes around it were over $1 million.
Right. And it needed renovation. It was not in great shape. It needed a roof and all that stuff. And remember, you said,
I was like, hell no, I don't want to, because mind you, I'm living in this, right? This is not a rental for me. I'm like, hell no, I don't want to live in this small house in this nice area. But it was all that I could afford. But I could have went to a worse area and got a nicer house, but then I'm super far outside of town.
So the best part is we were dating at the time. And we hadn't really gotten into our finances or anything like that. And I walk out. I said, you got to pay full price for this thing.
I know. You were dead set on it. And I trusted
you. Are you out of your mind?
I thought you were out of your mind. But I do know that at the time you knew more than I did about this stuff. So
I said, trust me, you got to pay full price. And she's like, I can't believe it. And then you called your dad.
Yeah, and my dad's like, no, don't do it. He's like, did you see that carpet? It's disgusting.
Luckily, your dad and I get along extremely well. But the point is, and what you did there was you bought what I would consider to be at the time the worst house in Scottsdale. Mm-hmm. Now, what's that thing worth?
It's worth $550,000.
Okay, so it's worth
double,
$300,000 more than you paid.
It's literally worth double. It doubled.
Yeah, in
9 years, but still.
Yeah, still, and it's paid off, and your renter is crushing it over there, and it's also one of the better spots to rent in Scottsdale.
Well, what's funny is property managers, because, I work with property managers through my clients now. And I advise some of my clients to buy 2-bed, 2-bath homes in Scottsdale because, I've had a lot of success with it. But the property managers always tell them not to do it. They're going to be so hard to rent. Nobody wants to rent a 2-2. And just my experience, I've never had a vacancy. I had a 1-month vacancy when I bought my last house. That's the only vacancy I've ever had. Because here's what I found is people that have 2 kids want cheaper rent. And sure, they would love a 3-bedroom house, I'm sure, but they also like the discount of not paying for the rent on a 3-bedroom house. So they put 2 of their kids in the master and they go in the other room and they call it a day.
Mind you, fenced yard, 2-car garage, courtyard, really, really incredible layout. These are nice, but built, 40, 50 years ago?
Yeah.
Probably. But renovated on the inside, and it's a neighborhood, right?
And it's a really nice neighborhood, and that's why when I working with these home buyers, it's like sometimes frustrating because they don't want the worst house in the best neighborhood, but they want appreciation, and the way to get appreciation is for everything around you to be nicer. Because what would you rather have? Everything be nicer and all these really luxury and then your little place, or would you rather be the luxury place and you have to worry about everybody else around you hopefully redoing their houses to make the area nicer? I would rather be in the first position.
And you gotta think past the what you're looking at, right? So like the first thing Danielle said was, "I have to live here," and I was like, "I know." This person was a pet sitter, right? Like
a pet sitter, drug addict, horror.
Yeah, like we walked in and there's all kinds of paraphernalia all over the place. But the point is the carpets were nasty, the place was nasty, and I'm like, it's a gut job, it's a redo. You'll get brand new appliances, brand new countertops, brand new flooring, brand new paint. And yes, that does cost. But again, back to the, I think the whole thing was 15 to 20 grand.
Yeah.
Completely all in, but like drop dead gorgeous.
Well, because the roof was good, the foundation was good, the structure was good.
I think we got the seller to put a new roof on as part of that. But the point is, what she got, you moved into that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What you got was a really nice place that was fully renovated from a 25 to 30-year-old interior. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people can't think past that.
Yeah, because here I do really believe though when you get a house, it's just a house. For a lot of people, like, it's exciting, but it's like when you get a new car. Like after a couple months, it's just a car. So, the things that I see people upset about is that they don't like their location, because that's the stuff that kind of smacks you in the face every day, right? You don't feel safe, riding your bike at night, or your kids can't play, or you're super far. You have to drive so far to work. Like those are the things that really bother people. I have yet to find someone that moves into the location that they want and then is upset because their house isn't big enough. Like, I know it can happen if you have a bunch of kids or something, but like, it's just so much more the opposite.
Yeah. The only thing that's scary at the place that you bought was your HOA board.
Yeah. My HOA board was scary. Well, I was like the youngest person that lived there at the time. So like they kind of picked on me.
They did not like you.
They didn't for literally no reason. I was at your house most of the time, but they just,
I remember she had an big, beautiful orange tree out back. God, and there was an orange that fell on the ground. Was it just?
Well, initially I did not know I had to pick up the oranges, so that was a miss on my part. So the first time there was like 10 oranges on the ground. Okay, like that was not good. But then after they gave me a citation for it, I'm like, oh crap, I have to be picking these up. They said it causes roof rats. Like that all makes sense. So then I was picking them up like every few days. So there'd be like 3 oranges on the ground every few days and I'd pick them up. Well, then I got another citation because they're like, we can't see any oranges. So I'm like, okay. So I literally had to pick them up every day after work. There'd be like an orange sometimes and I'd pick it up. But then I had to go on vacation to Florida and I had to ask my neighbor if she could come over every day to pick up the oranges. And then even doing that, one time they came by and there was an orange on the ground because apparently it fell in between them coming and me checking. So I got another citation. So that's when I said, that's it. Like, I'm done here. And
I love Ken Orange Tree.
Ken had me go through my CCNRs to find out they can't even govern the freaking fruit. So then I had to write them a letter letting them know that they can't govern the fruit. And they had to send a whole thing out to the whole neighborhood.
You see the orange tree from the road. Like, there's a solid wall maybe 5-6 feet high.
Uh-huh.
You can't even, you can see the top of the orange tree, but you can't see the ground.
Well, it was funny.
Somebody would have to walk up the driveway and peek over the gate.
Well, yeah, I found out my neighbor was on the HOA board, so I think she was getting a ladder out and looking.
Anyway, so I don't know. We went down a rabbit hole here, but the point is, be careful.
Yeah, and then so the last thing, and this is important for a home buyer, is keep your expenses at about 30% of your income, because what I see is people, they want to, the bank is going to lend them X, so they think, okay, great, that's my payment, but they don't factor in insurance, property taxes, if you have an HOA, expenses of owning a home. If something breaks, all of that needs to be added in on top of the mortgage, PMI.
Right.
And so make sure, your realtor could be really good at stretching your budget, and your lender can be really good at stretching your budget, because it's not their day-to-day that matters. So you need to look at your own budget, and you need to come up with how much you feel comfortable spending based on your payment.
And it's okay to bootstrap in the beginning, guys, and move in. Like, I think everyone's done that, right? Everyone's like saves to their last nickel. But just know, that's kind of what we're talking about with the savings account. Just know that this is the time that, especially that first year, is so critical.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard.
Keep your percentages down if you can. Don't go out and buy trinkets, new cars, and all that kind of stuff. You do not need that right now.
Yeah. And, I think so for some people, this is they might be the first person in their whole family generation that is owning a home. So they just don't really understand that, there are expenses associated with this, especially if you're not handy. You're going to need a handyman. You're going to need all of these things that you're not accounting for. And no matter how good of an inspection you get, you're going to have issues at some point. So you just need to make sure that you're not overextended. And if you do feel overextended, then that's when you need to save more money and wait. I mean, it's okay to wait to get what you want versus feeling pressured to get in right now. But it's really just doing an overall look at your situation and deciding what's best. And that's more important than interest rates and markets and all the different things for a first-time home buyer.
And what you brought up, one other good point of just before we wrap up here, is if you have an adjustable rate mortgage, this could get worse for you if rates go up. So just keep that in mind. So sometimes you buy with a teaser rate, or maybe it's a rate for a year or two, and then you have that kind of rude adjustment of, a higher payment, especially if you have that. So you need to be thinking a year to 2 years out, in that first time frame. You want to save, you want to keep your expenses, at that 30% range if you can. And you want to build some reserves up, and just always keep that, and don't go on a vacation with them, just, and come up with a number and just make it a target.
But you brought up something that is good to end on, is this includes those rate buy downs. So I know that the name of the game is you get a rate buy down, and then later you can refinance for a lower rate because rates are going to be down by then. And while I do think that that's probably true at this point, you do not want to assume that. So you want to assume that after the rate buy down, you are going to be paying the current interest rate. So you should know what your rate buy down sets at once the rate buy down is over, and that you can afford that payment. And if you can't afford that payment, then do not take the rate buy down, because you just don't know. Rates could be higher. Like, how, nobody knows. So if your realtor says they know, or your lender says they know, or the builder says they know, nobody knows. So you just really have to consider that when you're taking a rate buy down.
Prepare for the worst, guys. And there's nothing that can touch you if you're managing your expenses and you have proper savings.
Yep. All right. See you guys next week.